Our next presenter is Heidi Rabe, right? Okay, sorry. I just know you as Heidi. Which, you know, Heidi is my daughter Lucy's speech therapist, and actually also my son Alex's speech therapist, now come to think of it, but I always just kind of think of her as Lucy first. And Heidi was absolutely vital to kind of finding the right AAC journey for Lucy. We went through a couple of devices, and Heidi was instrumental in figuring out Lucy, first of all, and then choosing the device, and then getting Lucy to become a really great user of AAC. And so I'm really excited for her to share some things about AAC with you all. So Heidi Robbie, everybody.
Hello, thank you guys for coming. We actually are doing a split presentation, and I'm going to introduce Lydia first. I'm just kind of passing the buck here. Lydia Dawley is a young adult, amazing woman who has her bachelor's in communication sciences and disorders, and is it okay if I share that, Lydia? Wanted to be a speech-language pathologist, but our ableist system said no. So she worked around it and created her own business providing coaching to families and provides mentoring and education to children and adults who use AAC to help them use their AAC systems better. So when talking about AAC, one of the things in the field that we also have a difficulty with is representation. So I think it's really important to have a voice of someone who uses AAC. So she's going to start us out by talking about her journey with AAC, and then we'll have some time for questions, and it'll be a very show and tell kind of thing. I'll talk more about some other systems that are available. So I'm going to turn it over to Lydia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Dali. I'm from Decatur, Iowa. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin in Whitewater in May 2020. I am the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Click.Speak.Connect. When I was 3 years old, I started preschool. It was a great experience because I had a wonderful preschool teacher that could see my potential. She worked hard to help me get my voice out. She told my parents, "This girl has something inside her head. It's called brains." A lot with me using picture boards, which helped with my communication, but it was difficult for me to point, and I was limited on the number of pictures I could have on the board in front of me. So she tried a simple device with a switch that Keystone had for the school. Keystone in Iowa is the area education resource for school therapists and teachers to use. The device was similar to a clock-type device, and I would push the button to stop the arrow on what I wanted to say. This was my first experience with the device. My teacher and my therapist could tell my struggle for communication was beyond just my physical ability to access my communication device and boards. So they started to teach me to read in preschool. The assistive devices that had to be programmed and printed word boards could not predict what I wanted to talk about, and that would frustrate me. Learning to read was a big breakthrough. I could now read, but that also meant that I could spell. So when I entered kindergarten, I was mainstreamed into the regular classroom, and I was a speller. I didn't like the picture boards any longer, and I wanted to spell out things that I wanted. One of my biggest pet peeves with AAC devices is the programming. Therapists, teachers, and parents trying to predict what the AAC user is wanting to say. No one should predict someone else's responses or thoughts. To me, the programmed AAC devices limited my language to what someone else thought I was capable of communicating. Luckily for me, my parents, teachers, and therapists felt the same way. So when I was still in preschool, my support group formed to start looking at devices for me. My support group was made up of current teachers for the year, teachers for the next school year, all three of my therapists, occupational, speech and physical therapists, my personal aide, the special education coordinator, the Keystone IT person, and the district IT person, the principal and a parent support representative from the state, my parents and myself. My parents requested that I attend all my IEP meetings and any meetings that involved my AAC device. My parents felt that I needed to have a say in these things, and I am so lucky they felt that way, so I could help direct my education and my communication. My first device was called Gemini. I had a key guard and I used a pointer that my occupational therapist from our local hospital made for me. It was a prefabricated hand splint with a pointer attached to it for me to use. Because of my ethetoid movements that I could not control, my hand would let go of a pointer and I couldn't control it. So the fabricated one worked better, because even if my muscles let go, I didn't drop it since it was attached to my hand. By the end of first grade, I was really frustrated with accessing my device with a pointer. Even though I didn't drop my pointer anymore, I still had ethetoid movements that would cause me to miss my target and have to take several attempts to hit it, and it made communication very slow. After about an hour of being with me, she asked. I was still using my spelling board to answer questions quicker for my aide and teacher while doing activities in class. So my support team asked the representative from the Gemini company to help with access. So a representative from the company came to my school in second grade and spent the morning observing me using my device in my environment. This was very helpful for the representative to see. After about an hour of being with me, she asked why I never used my joystick to access my device, since I had such good control with it while maneuvering my power wheelchair. So that became my new access method. My team worked with the local durable medical equipment provider to get a joystick that could be connected to my device via computer cable. Then I also had to use a switch to select my choice after I moved the arrow to it with my joystick. I used the Gemini device until I was in 5th grade. At that time, my support group decided that the Gemini device wasn't going to support my language capabilities as I was learning and growing. So we began the process for a new device. We decided on the Mercury as my second device. It had the capabilities to grow my language and also the abilities to allow me to do my homework on it like a PC computer. This was important to me, as I wanted to do my own work. My team decided I needed an assistive communication aide, someone that could coordinate all my homework sheets and books that needed to be scanned onto my device and make sure it was completed in a timely manner for me to participate in class. So I had my personal aide that was with me all day, and now I had an assistive communication aide. I think it is very important for a kid to have the same aid year after year. they develop a relationship that really makes them seem as one unit. I had the same aide from first grade until I graduated. She was like my second mom. Now, my assistive communication aide was a different story. She wanted to be in charge of my device and didn't want me to make any changes or additions to any of my boards. So my parents requested my IE me that I be in charge of my device and decide what is to be deleted off my device and allowed to be trained to program my device myself. So it was set how I wanted it, and the assistive communication aid was only to scan into the device what the teachers give to her. So from that point on, I was in charge of what was put on my device. I was always on the internet researching things, and in 7th grade I found a device that allowed access by using your eyes. It seemed so much faster, so I printed off the information and gave it to my teacher and told her I need this device. Well, I probably should have told my parents, as they were pretty surprised when they got a call from the school. I tried several different models of eye gaze devices. We decided on the Easy Calm eye gaze device. The only thing I didn't like about it was that it was all black. There was a camera that attached to the bottom of the device that read the pupils to know what letter or word you wanted to select. I asked the company for a pink camera. They had never made a colored camera before. I asked them to try. Well, when I got my device, I had a pink camera. So now they offer a rainbow of colors for their cameras. The eye gaze worked pretty good. The problem was my ectoid movements made it so I would have to recalibrate the camera more often than someone who could control their head movements. So that was an inconvenience for me. Then I needed glasses, and that really threw off the calibration to the point I couldn't use my eye gaze device while wearing my glasses. Another disadvantage with the eye gaze device is it isn't very mobile. Similar to the previous devices I had, the eye gaze devices have to be a certain distance from your eyes in order to pick up the calibration. So when I had it on my wheelchair mount, I couldn't use my eyes to operate the device because it had to be so far in front of me. I couldn't see good enough to drive my wheelchair when I had it mounted. So I had to use my joystick to operate it, and that was much slower, and I didn't like that. The eye gaze had Bluetooth capabilities, so my support team worked hard and was able to get me a new Bluetooth joystick funded through my parents' private insurance and my medical assistance. The nice thing about Bluetooth is it allowed me to be more independent. I could turn the Bluetooth on myself and operate my device when and where I choose, without needing someone to hook up a cable to my device. But I still wasn't happy with the size and the inconvenience of having the device on my wheelchair and how slow it was for communication. So I continued to research products. I found one called the Wego, and it was from the same company that made my eye gaze device. I tried that out and really liked it because of the size and independence I had with it. It was the same size as an iPad, so I bought an iPad and tried the ProLoque app on it, but didn't really like that app as it was hard for me to access the buttons. Well, my mom contacted a speech therapist that she had went to high school with that now lived in Alabama to see what he might have for suggestions for a communication device for me. He happened to be coming to Minnesota for a training, so he offered to come meet me and see what he could advise. So he came to my high school and met with me and my therapist, my mom and the IT coordinator from Keystone. He watched me operate my iPad for just a few minutes. He then asked me, "Why is it you want a communication device instead of using your iPad?" I typed out for him, because my mom said I had to have a device. Then he looked at my mom and laughed and said, "Why can't she use her iPad?" My mom's reply was, "Well, I thought all nonverbal people have used devices." Well, this was the day my life was changed for the better. So my new friend loaded an app onto my iPad called Words for Life. With Words for Life, the word is always in the same spot. You don't have the same word like orange in many locations. Most devices had the word orange under colors and also under fruit. But with Words for Life app, it is on the board only once. So you can learn a repetitive movement to find the word without even looking at the device. I also learned at a young age that I didn't like people reading over my shoulder and answering me before I even got my question typed out. So before you read a person's screen, ask them. Some people like it and some do not. I do not. Even though I had a device, I always still used other forms of communication as well. For example, I used my paper communication board. For people that know me well, like my family, my school aide, some teachers and friends, I will talk and spell out words with my hands. I tried sign language when I was 3 years old. Due to my cerebral palsy, I couldn't do the traditional signs. So I developed my own that I could physically do, and my family and my personal aide learned to understand them. I think it is important to not limit people to one type of assistive communication. Whatever the user is comfortable with should be allowed. I also think every speech therapist and special education major should have to use an assistive communication device as part of their training so they can relate to their nonverbal clients. I would suggest for one day, no verbal speaking. You will see the frustration so you can have a better understanding of what life is like for the people you are learning to help. My hometown was 4 hours away from my college. My parents had a hard time with me going to college so far away, but they also believed in me. It hasn't been easy. I had problems with my wheelchair, and it would turn off and I was stuck, couldn't move. My iPad battery died, so I couldn't ask anyone for help. A gal stopped and she wanted to help me, but couldn't understand me when I tried to tell her the override switch was on the back of my wheelchair on the bottom. So she called the campus police. They came and they were pushing buttons and looking my chair over, and they finally hit the right one, and my chair turned back on. Well, my parents freaked out when they read my Facebook status because I posted I had only been at college 2 months and the cops were called on me. In May of 2020, I graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater, with a Bachelor of Science degree. Since then, I have started my own business called Click.Speak.Connect. I consult with speech-language pathologists, teachers, parents, and clients in access methods, including faster access device experiences I have had in order to help with learning new apps and language skills related to augmentative communication. I do Zoom sessions with children who use augmentative communication devices for their mode of communication. We practice social skills with a goal to improve their confidence with their communication devices. I would like to spend more of my time with in-person visits at schools and clinics helping teachers, pairs, and SLPs working with clients and their parents. And my hope one day is to open my own clinic to provide services for AAC users. I am creating a new product called NavPen. A NavPen is a stylus for the iPad or any mobile device. I created it because since I have cerebral palsy, it is hard to use the other styluses because they are too thin and I press down so hard that I rub the rubber ends off. I designed the NavPen so it is more thicker to hang on to and your hand doesn't slide down. I also designed the NavPen that it has a bigger end on it, that it is more secure, and it is easier to press down to select. The NavPen has a wrist strap on it, so the user doesn't have to worry about dropping it and picking it back up. I have been working with an engineer on the progress of getting NavPen manufactured. This is the official prototype that I'm using. The best advice I have is, do not limit anyone. Different situations sometimes require different types of communication access. Also, never give up on an idea. Just because it doesn't work today doesn't mean it won't work tomorrow or in 10 years. Remember how I said I had to use a pointer attached to a hand splint when I was younger? Well, did you notice how I can hold on to a stylus now? I developed more strength and control, so now I can actually use the access method I tried and struggled with before. Keep reintroducing things because you never know. Thank you for letting me share my experiences with AAC. I'll let Heidi start her part. And then after, I'd love to show you how my AAC app works or answer your questions that you may have. Take it away, Heidi.
Thanks, Lydia. The challenge of, sorry.
If anybody has any questions, I'll get my steps in, because we have to, for purposes of the live stream and recording, I want to make sure any questions are in the microphone, so you have to kind of wait, but yeah, awesome.
All right. Thanks, Lydia. And I will try to stay far enough away from there while also managing my computer. So I passed around what the home screen of Lydia's device looks like, what the app looks like, which is, like she said, Lamp Boards for Life. So my part is kind of going to be a little bit more informal, a little bit of show and tell about all of the options, or some of the options that are available, because there are, when we dive into AACs, as you guys may know, there's a ton of options and it's gotten very overwhelming. So the exciting thing about this field is it's young. The iPad revolutionized it and there's tons and tons of apps now, but the overwhelming and sometimes extra challenging part is that there's so many choices, and a lot of people who are developing apps are developing them for a specific purpose or a specific person and not thinking about the long-term language. And as Lydia said, highlighted, many people who use AAC do change devices or systems over time. Some of that is because companies go out of business, companies decide to stop making the software, the access needs change, like how they're using the device changes, their language needs change, plethora of reasons. So, let's see. I think I'm going to pull up some of my software because it'll be easier for you guys to see on my screen. So I'm going to start with something called TD Snap. And TD Snap is made by Tobii Dynavox. That is one of the main companies. So it has been around for a while. I will say they do have a history of changing some of their software. And they use a combination of phrase and sentence based on topics and then single words, which are generally called core words. And if you guys want to know more about kind of the terminology of AAC, we did a 1-hour intro to AAC. Was it called webinar video? Yeah. Last year, and it's on the Grin2B website. So let me make this bigger. And all right. This is actually one of my clients. So let me get out of that. There's no identifiable user information here, so okay with you guys seeing it. So this is how you create a new user. So you just do new name. I apparently didn't notice I already had test in here. And then you have options of need symbol support, text only, or aphasia, because they have different vocabulary arrangements. Most of my clients do both. So they also have the option of touch, which is where you use your finger to select. Eye gaze, they have dedicated devices for that. Their eye gaze is coming for the iPad. It's not quite stable enough yet. And then also scanning, which is Lydia mentioned, so you're using a switch to advance your choices until you hear the one that you want. Core first is their main vocabulary. And we're going to go with the girl's voice. And then you also select a grid size. 80 is the biggest grid that they have. You can see that So these symbols are called board maker symbols, and this one is arranged with your questions on the side, and it's intended in what's called subject verb objects, SVO order. So who your sentence is about, your object, your action, and then object are generally how we compose in English. So that's the general core page. And then you have lists of words in here. So if you wanted to say, I like ice cream, you have to go to word lists, food and drink, snacks and sweets, and then find
ice cream.
So you can see it's a fair bit of navigation. So it takes a lot of motor effort. The benefit of this one, so you have topics. I'm just going to pick on camping.
It is in the tent.
So that's your whole sentences, and these are all structured in a similar way. So it's intended for you to be able to communicate an entire sentence, but you don't really have control over what those sentences are in the moment. They just are what they are. And then it has the quick fires, which are things that you just rapidly say, that you say often. So that is one option. And then touch chat is probably one of the more common. So TD Snap is also very common. Touch chat is also
welcome to Chat Editor.
A common one. This is actually Lucy's vocabulary. So I did make a custom vocabulary for her. And this is the software emulator. These are all of it. These are available on the iPad or as dedicated devices. It's just easier for me to show you on the emulator. And I'm going to do, so they have like single word based, and then they also have core language. So core language are the little words that we often use to form language. And their big thing is called predictive navigation. So if you do I eat, a page of foods already show up. So it reduces that motor load. The challenge with this is if you wanted to say, like, I eat bamboo, to meaning like a panda bear, which one of my clients actually did. He ended up going through and finding veggie sticks because he was stuck in the food page and lost that thought. So after a certain level, the prediction actually can make it harder and more frustrating. But for those early language or kids who have a lot of motor challenges, this tends to be really helpful. So I
love.
And it has prediction right there too. And I will pass around. And this, I'll pass around what their homepage looks like. This one goes from 20 locations all the way up to more than 100. I generally use the 42, the 60, and the 80 because they are pretty robust and easier to navigate and motor-wise. Okay. That is going. I'm going to pass around. So that is what the home screen of the 60 looks like, and on the flip side, on the flip side is the Spanish version. Ask me later because I do need speech. All right, and so this one is 84. The vocabulary you see right now, that is intended for scanners. So this is Unity. So it is only available on dedicated devices, which I will also pass around for you guys to play with. And its whole premise is motor learning. So this is a system that Lydia's is based off of. So Unity is made by PRC, and PRC and Saltillo are sister companies, and PRC was the first company to develop speech-generating AAC. So they've been around for over 50 years. And their language system was developed originally by 2 engineers, and then they met a linguist, and that's where this has come from. So it's really a language system and has rules. It's very overwhelming at first. I will admit, it took me many years to get on board and understand it because I needed someone to teach me it. So once you understand it, it makes sense. So all of your pronouns are yellow on the left, and then your verb tenses all stay in the exact same spot. So there's a verb tense location, not a page of verbs. So like in the other 2 systems, they're called page-based. So this one, so time, start, is in the exact same spot. Oh, come on, sorry. Well, start is in the same spot as eat, as drink. And the same thing, drank is in the same spot as ate, as played. So you start to develop that motor automaticity. So your hand just naturally goes to that spot. So you have to learn where they are in the front, and then the second half of the motor plan is more automatic. Let's see if I can minimize that. All right. And then LAMP is what Lydia is using. So the creators of LAMP took Unity and saw some challenges within Unity, and then they created kind of a cousin program that they intend for kids who are autistic and have difficulty separating the word order or like the word boundaries of words, but many other people are using it. So you can see that Lydia's using it. There's many other people using it. So that's the huge, like, the super boring, like, overview. What questions do you guys have?
I'll say we've had our daughter on it for how many years now? 2? 2 years, and She communicates well, but at some point she'll sit and just press buttons, and we kind of have a hard time drawing the line of playing versus just exploring words. I mean, you know, a regular child's just going to sit around and say random words to see what makes sense. But at what point do we need to say, all right, that's enough. You know, that you need to stop playing and maybe do something else. And then at what point is it okay just to kind of let her explore and learn what new words mean and how we react to things that she says? Oh, yeah, we use TD Snap.
Yeah, we use the Snap Core on an iPad.
Sorry, I realized I asked you two very different questions there.
I can start and if you want, I can share my SCR up 0 EEN. I can start, and if you want, I can share my screen.
Perfect. While you're doing that, I'm just passing around a few other of the home pages, and on the second side of that, what you'll notice are some words are hidden, and that's a common technique when we're first learning vocabulary, is to hide some that we're focusing on and then open them back up to everything.
I have a lot of to CLIENTS clients. Who do that? And I always tell, there, parent, parents, to, that's, okay, but, I know, it can, drive, you, crazy, but, I, also, tell, the, parent, to, kind, of, R, E, S, P, O, M, N, D, colon, respond, to, what, they are, pushing, were, like, if, they are, pushing, sun, sun, on, sun, then, maybe, talk, about, the, Whether. Because. We need. To teach. Kid. Kids. Fair. Word. Words. M. A. T. T. E. 2. W. R. V. Matter. And. Have. Meaning. I have a lot of clients who do that, and I always tell their parents that's okay, but I know it can drive you crazy, but I also tell the parent to kind of respond to what they are pushing, like if they are pushing sun, then maybe talk about the weather, because we need to teach kids their words matter and have meaning.
Excellent. Thanks, Lydia. The only thing I would add to that is the goal of communication, especially AAC, is autonomy, to be able to say what you want, when you want, to who you want, in a way that you want. So what may look like pressing random buttons to us may be communicative for them. They just don't necessarily know another way to say it. The other thing that I do recognize is sometimes it can get in the way of family life or school life and responding to their exploring their device and what they're saying, similarly to if a child was using their natural speech, and having that time to really explore as well, so that they have that time to know that that's their voice and that their voice matters. So I'm also passing around, these are all the different sizes that the PRC and Saltillo products come in, if you guys want to see, and it has a little bit more information, because I know we did it super, super fast. All right, other questions? Or are we out of time?
Kind of out of time. But we're going into our break. I guess if you guys have more questions. Heidi, are you able to stick around? Mm-hmm. Okay. We also have more AAC-related freebies out in the hallway on one of the shelves. You'll see it right out there, that were donated by the company Tobii Dynavox.